Hello, and welcome back to another video. Today, we will be going over a different topic. We will be going over 10 most grueling ancient Roman capital punishments. We will be ranking these from 10 to 1 in brutality and by the pain in which the individual underwent. But before we start, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so that you're notified when we next upload. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Number 10. Beheading. A swift execution method, typically reserved for Roman citizens and the elite, considered more honorable than other forms. Common throughout the Republic and Empire, especially from the 1st century BCE onward. Used during the Diocletianic persecution, 303 to 311 CE, where numerous Christians, including Bishop Anthimus, were beheaded. Number 9. Forced suicide. This type of punishment was prominent during the early Empire, particularly under emperors like Nero, 54 to 68 CE. Forced suicide is a method of execution where the victim is coerced into committing suicide to avoid facing an alternative option they perceive as much worse. The victims would either drink hemlock or fall on their swords. The culprit could have met the law enforcers even at their house, and they would give him the honorable option to commit. Seneca the Younger, a philosopher and advisor to Nero, was ordered to commit suicide in 65 CE. One of the most well-known forced suicides is that of the philosopher Socrates, who drank hemlock after his trial for allegedly corrupting the youth of Athens. A most recent case of forced suicide was that of Erwin Rommel, a German military leader during World War II, was implicated in a plot to assassinate Adolf Hitler in 1944. On Hitler's orders, 2 generals went to Rommel's home and offered him a choice of either going through a public trial, which would inevitably lead to his execution and the punishment of his family, or taking his own life by swallowing cyanide, in which case he would receive a hero's funeral and his family would be spared imprisonment. Rommel opted for suicide on October 14, 1944. Details of his fate were confirmed by his widow and son after the end of the war. Number 8. Thrown from the Tarpeian Rock. From the early Republic, 500 BCE, until at least 71 CE. Traitors and serious criminals were hurled from this cliff overlooking the Roman Forum, resulting in death by impact. Spurius Cassius, 485 BCE, and Marcus Manlius Capitolinus, 384 BCE, were executed this way for treason. Number 7. Burning alive. Employed sporadically throughout Roman history, notably during the Diocletianic persecution, 303 to 311 CE. A painful method in where victims were tied to wooden stakes and set ablaze, which was often used for arsonists or during religious persecutions. In 307 CE, a man named Domninus was burned alive for his Christian faith. Number 6. Flogging to death. A common preliminary punishment throughout Roman history, sometimes leading to death. Victims were beaten with metal-tipped whips until death ensued from blood loss and trauma. In ancient Rome, flogging was a common punishment, and in some cases, it could be severe enough to cause death, particularly for slaves or non-citizens. While not always a death sentence, flogging or flagellation could be a prelude to crucifixion or, in extreme cases, could lead to death due to the severity of the beating. During the Diocletianic persecution, individuals like Peter were scourged severely, with salt and vinegar poured into wounds, leading to death. Number 5. Burying alive. Practiced during the Republic and early Empire, with the last recorded case in 83 BCE. Primarily used for Vestal virgins who broke their vow of chastity, they were entombed underground with minimal provisions. The victim would have a large grave dug up for them, in which they would be thrown into and then sealed away with dirt and forgotten about. Vestal Virgin Cornelia was buried alive in 90 BCE for violating her vows. Number 4. Damnatio ad bestias, condemnation to beasts. From the 2nd century BCE to the 3rd century CE, damnatio ad bestias, Latin for condemnation to beasts, was a form of capital punishment in ancient Rome where condemned individuals were forced to fight wild animals in public spectacles. This barbaric form of execution was a type of blood sport, often involving lions, tigers, or other dangerous animals. It was a brutal spectacle designed to entertain the Roman populace and to serve as a public display of the consequences of violating Roman law or social norms. Used extensively during the persecution of Christians, with figures like Ignatius of Antioch, Perpetua, and Felicity meeting their deaths this way. Number 3. Dismemberment/quartering. Rare in Roman practice but used in extreme cases throughout the Republic and Empire. To cut and hack apart his entire body into 4 pieces, and thus be punished unto death, and such 4 parts are to be hanged on stakes publicly on 4 common thoroughfares. The culprit of the crime would be seized and subjected to usually 3 ways of meeting their end. They would either be tied to a pole and be fed to a hungry animal. Alternatively, they could be forced onto a mechanical device which tears limbs off in a slow and grueling process. Or they could simply be dismantled using weapons and tools. Specific documented cases are scarce, but the method was reserved for the most heinous crimes. Number 2. Pena Culiae, punishment of the sack. First documented around 100 BCE, revived by Emperor Constantine in 318 CE, and remained in use into the Byzantine era. The culprit who was convicted of killing their parent or close relative will be shoved into a large sack, and animals such as dogs, snakes, and even monkeys and roosters would also be placed in the sack. When looking at this, the extra animals were completely unnecessary and would have only made it chaotic for the individual. But then again, it might have been a form of shaming the individual, as they would be left at the bottom of the sea with animals, I guess. Publius Malleolus was executed this way for matricide around 100 BCE. Number 1. Crucifixion. Widely used from the 3rd century BCE until abolished by Emperor Constantine in the 4th century CE. Victims were nailed or tied to a cross and left to die slowly from exhaustion and asphyxiation. The body will also be left there for long as a form of intimidation for others who were inspiring to do the same crime. Thousands of slaves from the Spartacus Rebellion were crucified in 71 BCE. And that's it for today. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you're notified when we next upload. See you next time.